Thanks for joining us on Chicago Tonight. I'm Brandis Friedman. Here's what we're looking at.
A mask cannot shield agents from accountability.
Former Mayor Lori Lightfoot joins us to discuss her latest venture documenting alleged abuse by federal immigration agents.
Hell yeah!
And the Bears keep their Super Bowl dreams alive, but can they slow down the NFL's #1 offense? First off tonight, U.S. Senator Tammy Duckworth is pushing for more funding to replace hundreds of thousands of lead service lines in Chicago. She's calling for $125 million to be restored in the budget currently being negotiated in Congress.
You know, under the big, beautiful bill, they funded ICE to the tune of $2 billion by raiding that money from all sorts of places, including the drinking water funds to keep our drinking water clean. So all I'm doing is trying to put back something that a bipartisan group of senators had agreed to.
The Senate is set to vote on a measure already approved by the House of Representatives that clawed back an unspent portion of the $15 billion set aside for lead service line removal. City crews in Chicago have replaced less than 4% of the city's lead service lines since the work began 5 years ago. Plans call for another 10,000 to be replaced this year at a cost of $300 million. Duckworth says she's now concerned that cuts approved by the House would make the process in Chicago even slower, even as cities like Newark, New Jersey, and Rockford have made rapid progress. 3 former DePaul basketball players and 1 former Chicago Bull are among more than 24 being accused of rigging college games. Former DePaul players Jalen Terry and Deshaun Nelson are charged in connection with the wide-ranging point-shaving scandal. Another former DePaul player, Mac Etienne, is named in the complaint, stating he has been charged elsewhere, as well as former Chicago Bulls guard Antonio Blakeney. Blakeney is described in the indictment as one of a handful of, quote, fixers who offered bribe payments to players to fix DePaul men's basketball games. Terry, Nelson, and Etienne allegedly agreed to underperform during the first half of their game against Georgetown in February 2024 in order to ensure DePaul would not cover the first half-point spread. In a statement, a university spokesperson says the school is, quote, deeply disappointed and that no current student athletes were members of the 2023-24 teams. For more on this story, you can check out our website. The city's first center to support women returning home from prison opened its doors in Chicago today.
It is a win for every woman and survivor who has come home from jail or prison only to feel overlooked in a one-size-fits-all program for men misunderstood, shamed, not believed, undeserving, or as if she left her dignity at the door.
The city's director of reentry teased its opening right here on our program last night. The Community Reentry Support Center, or CRSC, will be housed at the Women's Justice Institute, a Chicago-based nonprofit focused on ending women's mass incarceration and building leadership among formerly incarcerated women. The new center will provide a child-friendly space, as 60% of women returning home from incarceration are mothers to children under 18. As well as providing support with mental health, housing, and employment navigation, among other offerings. Chicagoans took a record number of shared bike and scooter trips last year. Divvy's bike and scooter sharing system accounted for 6.8 million rides, while Lime scooters accounted for 6.1 million, for a combined total of nearly 13 million trips. That's almost 2 million more trips than in 2024, according to the city. City also says it added 140 new Divvy stations with more than 2,000 new docks last year, along with expanding in-station charging for e-bikes and e-scooters. Up next, new efforts to hold federal immigration agents accountable, led by a former Chicago mayor. We explain right after this.
Chicago Tonight is made possible in part by the Alexandra and John Nichols family, the Polk Brothers Foundation, and the support of these donors.
new project is underway with the goal of holding federal immigration agents accused of misconduct accountable. Former Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot is behind the initiative called the ICE Accountability Project, and it allows community members to submit their own documentation of incidents. It comes in the wake of last week's fatal shooting of Minneapolis woman Renee Nicole Good by an ICE agent there. And joining us now with more is Lori Lightfoot. Welcome back to Chicago Tonight. Thanks for joining us.
It's good to be here.
So the state has already launched what it's calling the Illinois Accountability Commission. It will hold hearings and similarly create a public record of what residents have been experiencing during Operation Midway Blitz. How is yours different?
So I think that our project at reporticenow.com, I have to get that in, of course, will really be working in harmony with the state. The head of the commission, former Chief Judge Ruben Castillo, is somebody that I've known for 30 years and worked with on a range of different projects. We talked about our two separate missions. I think with the, as I understand the state's project, they will primarily focus on really assessing the harm to individuals and families and community, which is obviously a very important thing. We are creating a centralized repository for people who have collected video, audio, and other information about what ICE has done in Chicago and really Chicagoland. So we have a centralized repository for hopefully later holding people accountable. Hopefully local law enforcement will look at this information, not have to search across various social media platforms, find individuals. We want to house all that information here. One, for transparency, but also for accountability. And the second aspect of the project is really focused on so-called unmasking the agents. We're not talking about doxing federal agents, but there are agents that you have seen on videotape that have looked like they've committed crimes. Poor Mr. Silverio Villegas Gonzalez was killed on September 12th. Ms. Miramar Martinez was shot, luckily not killed. But we have to hold these people accountable who are doing egregious things and let, obviously, local law enforcement call balls and strikes, but we want to create the information that they can readily access to make decisions about who should or should not be charged.
So to that point, in an op-ed, you note that, quote, to date, no federal immigration agent has been investigated by local, county, or state law enforcement authorities for these incidents, not one. Are there even legal avenues for local governments to pursue investigations beyond filing suit?
Yes, of course. If a homicide is committed, like in the instance of Mr. Gonzalez in Franklin Park, that's a homicide that's committed within a local county jurisdiction, and the county prosecutor certainly has jurisdiction over that. Now, there's a lot of questions that have to be resolved around immunity and so forth, but there's a homicide that's been committed. Certainly if this was done by any other level of law enforcement, particularly local law enforcement, there'd be no question that there would be an investigation. And again, we want to incentivize, by collecting the information, the local authorities who have the ability to do something about these allegations of criminal conduct and serious misconduct, like excessive force, like indiscriminate use of chemical agents and tear gas. We want them to be able to do their jobs effectively and, frankly, not have what's happened in Minnesota regarding the killing of poor Miss Good, where the feds come in and sweep up all the information and really hamper the ability of local law enforcement to do its job.
You mentioned immunity. We have spoken to both Attorney General Kwame Raoul about this just yesterday and the day before that. Professor Harold Krent, what is your read on law enforcement officers and how much immunity they have in these cases?
Well, I think the Supreme Court in a case last session called U.S. v. Martin really opened up the door and made it very clear that there is possibility, for at least on the civil side, for suits against individual officers when they are accused of violating people's civil rights. Criminal is a much more complicated issue, but the Supreme Court hasn't closed the door on that. There is no evidence whatsoever in the statutes that somehow, as Vice President Vance tried to declare, that officers who commit, agents who commit egregious crimes against residents are somehow immune. I don't think that's what the state of the law is at this point.
The project launched last week. What kind of reception have you gotten as far as other uploads and incidents being reported to the website?
Well, we've had over 1,000 people within 48 hours visit the website. We're starting to see uploads. I think there's a great opportunity for us to continue reaching out to communities and the activists and stakeholders to educate them about this resource that is available. But we feel very, very good about how this project has been received in lots of different quarters, not only here, but really across the country, that to the extent that people are hearing about it, they're excited about the opportunity.
How are you and your team confirming the veracity of these videos? I think folks want to know that like something that's not AI is going to get slipped in.
Well, that's a great question. So we're doing it in a couple different ways. We are working on an AI tool ourselves to be able to detect whether or not the information, particularly video information, has been altered in some way. But really, there's multiple levels of review. There's a frontline level of review that looks at the information to confirm date, time, location. You know, luckily here in Chicago, when these incidents happen, there's a lot of reporting, there's a lot of Facebook and social media acknowledgement of when these opportunities happen. And then there's a second line review that's going to include myself, other lawyers, former federal agents, to make sure, frankly, we're not getting duped into posting something that never actually happened. So we are working on every precaution that we possibly can. We have people sign up to be able to post information on the website. So we've got different layers of review and checking to make sure that whatever we decide to publish is actually accurate.
You mentioned the team, right? You mentioned former federal agents, attorneys, you yourself, of course, former federal prosecutor, in addition to former mayor of the city of Chicago. Who is working with you on this, and who's funding it? Who's behind you?
So, you know, for obvious reasons, we're keeping identities of folks that are involved confidential. But they are people that I have known and worked with over a number of different years, both in my time as a former federal prosecutor, in my time as a lawyer. And frankly, since this launch, I've had a number of people reach out and say, hey, I'd like to be involved. How can I help? And look, we've been fortunate with generous funding, but we're going to keep the donors' identities confidential right now.
Once you have collected this repository, of course, photos, videos, reports from all the people on the ground, what do you hope comes of all of it? Well,
I think a couple things. One, I hope that it adds to a level of transparency about what's been happening. And when you look at the number of incidents that have happened, and I have every reason to believe, unfortunately, that it's going to continue. They're going to come back probably when the weather gets warmer. We're going to see a mass of folks come back. But it's pretty eye-opening and alarming to see the number of incidents aggregated together in one spot. The other thing is, what I've been very proud of watching people all across Chicago and Chicagoland is how they have found their voice. People that aren't necessarily out there in the street on a regular basis, who aren't activists, feel very animated about this and are doing lots of things, whether it's joining safety patrol for kids to get to school, whether it's using the whistles to alert people in their neighborhood that ICE is active and present in the neighborhoods, and beyond that, protesting both, you know, in their neighborhoods, downtown and at the Broadview ICE facility. People are finding their voice here, and really, I think we've become a model for the nation. Obviously, LA got the first wave of it, but I think we've taken the tools that we found in LA here in Chicago and really refined them in ways, and we're seeing those tools now being used in Minneapolis.
Going back to your time as mayor a bit, 2021 probe by the Office of Inspector General found that the city and the Chicago Police Department botched the response to the protests and the unrest that were triggered by the George Floyd murder in May of 2020. The report said that officers who struck, punched, and kicked protesters will not be held accountable. Do you see a difference between the conduct and behavior of Chicago police officers at the time and Department of Homeland Security officers partaking in misconduct?
Well, let me first say I at the time and still fundamentally disagree with that assessment by the Inspector General's office. We were facing very unprecedented times. We were facing not just peaceful protests, but people who came for a fight and people who wanted to provoke actions on the part of Chicago police officers. But I think, you know, if you look at my contemporaneous statements, you look at the statements of former Superintendent David Brown, we never apologize or try to do anything other than hold officers accountable from the small things like taking off their name tags. That's not acceptable. Not having their body cameras on, not acceptable. Engaging in escalating tactics instead of de-escalating. Now, to be clear, as I said, our police face unprecedented challenges by vigilantes who wanted a fight. They weren't just the peaceful protesters. The peaceful protests over and over again got hijacked by people who had a very different agenda. But obviously, I've spent a big chunk of my professional and adult life working on police reform and accountability issues. And the fact of the matter is, when things happened and went wrong in Chicago, we held officers accountable. We had a number of oversight mechanisms. You're not seeing that at the federal level, and that's the problem.
Okay, well, that's where we'll have to leave it. 5 seconds, Mayor. Could we see a return to the political arena for you?
You know, I don't see that happening. You know, there are many things about being the mayor that I enjoyed and that I miss, but I'm content to be a private citizen and doing my part from the sidelines.
So not today.
Not today, not tomorrow.
Not tomorrow, not next week. All right, Mayor Lori Lightfoot, thank you so much for joining us.
It's my pleasure.
And we're back with more right after this. The Cinderella season continues as the Bears gear up for a divisional round showdown against the Rams on Sunday. Quarterback Caleb Williams and company kept their Super Bowl hopes alive against the Green Bay Packers last Saturday, overcoming an 18-point fourth-quarter deficit. Will late-game heroics be enough to overcome MVP favorite Matt Stafford and the high-powered Rams offense? Joining us with his thoughts is James Big Cat Williams, former offensive lineman for the Chicago Bears. Welcome back. Didn't think we'd be here today, did we?
I did.
You knew. Actually, you did predict it.
I thought that we'd be back, but it got a little hairy there for a little while.
Yep.
Right? Yes. Yes.
So, go ahead.
No, I'm just happy to be back.
We're happy to have you. So obviously that was a huge win against the Packers last weekend. What was it that jumped out to you about this Bears team in their first playoff game since 2020?
They had no lack of confidence. It was something that they had pulled off several times during the season. You know, 6 wins in the last final minutes of a game. And for them to do it again, it was impressive to watch because at halftime, you know, you wanted to sit there and you wanted to be excited knowing that they had a chance in the second half, but you just weren't sure. So to see them come back in the second half and do what they did in the fourth quarter, to put that game on ice, it was a fun thing to watch.
No lack of confidence despite the lack of touchdowns in the first half.
Yeah.
We talked about Caleb Williams' inexperience last week. He had a pair of interceptions on Saturday, but he also made some huge plays, as you said, late in the game. Do you think he did enough to ease fans' nerves? No is the answer to that, because you yourself were quite concerned.
Yeah, it's fun in a sense because you always expect them to be able to do something in the second half, in the fourth quarter. But to have them, for them to put themselves in that situation over and over and over again, it makes it rough on the fans. It makes it rough on everybody. You know, it's a team that does a great job at halftime of going in, saying this doesn't work, let's try this, and this, and that's what has worked for them this season.
It's worked for them this season. You know, you're talking about this, you know, coming back from that 18-point deficit in the fourth quarter against the Packers. Is that sustainable going forward? Is that the secret sauce, or is that going to get tougher as the teams get tougher?
I don't think anybody thought it was sustainable up until this point. You know, it's something that they can do. It's something that they have a belief in. They never feel as though they're out of a game. So who says it can't happen 2 or 3 more times on the way to the big show?
The big show. All right, we're going to come back to that because the Bears defense managed to slow down the Packers in the second half, but in all allowed 421 yards of offense and 322 passing yards, plus 4 touchdowns from Jordan Love. How can this Bears defense, how can they clean it up heading into Sunday?
That's disturbing. It is, especially with a Rams team coming in here with as potent of an offense as they have. I mean, this is the same conversation we had last week as far as they have to start faster. They have to start faster. They have to get the running game going. They have to keep the Rams offense off the field. And if they're able to do that, I think they stand a good chance. If they're not able to do that, this is not Green Bay. I don't think if you go down 21 points or if you're down 18 points, it's going to be a lot harder to come back versus the Rams than it was versus the Packers.
All right, to that point, because then I do want to get to the Rams offense. You know, it's not Green Bay, it's Chicago. It's going to be really cold on Saturday, and the Bears typically know how to play in that. What impact do you think the weather's going to have on an LA team playing against the Bears at home?
Well, I think it'll have a little bit of an impact. I think the big impact for the Rams players is going to be when they first step off the plane. When you come from, 80 degrees out there today, and you step off the plane Saturday evening or Saturday afternoon, and it's 15 and the wind's whipping, it's going to be a little bit of a shock to some of those players. Guys like Stafford, Devontae Adams, who played for Green Bay, who have played in weather like this, they will know a little bit more. They will have a little bit more of an advantage. But you're going to have some guys come in that have never played in temperatures like they're going to play in this weekend. Just like you've got some Bears players that have never played in weather like this, but they have the opportunity during the week to practice it.
To practice in this cold. Rams led the NFL in total offense this season, putting up 394 yards per game. What is the biggest threat from the Rams offense?
Those wide receivers. Puka, Adams, Stafford being able to get them the ball, run after the catch. It's going to be a test for the Bears. You saw how they got diced up a little bit, well, a lot of bit in the first half of the Green Bay game. They cannot let the Rams come out and do the same thing. They cannot let them go up and down the field in the first half. They're going to have to come up with some stops and put some pressure on Stafford.
Defensive side a little bit, they allowed 333 yards of offense and 4 touchdowns against Bryce Young and the Panthers. That unit might be susceptible. How would you like to see the Bears offense attack the Rams in this game?
Same way last week. You know, we talked about being able to run the ball early, stay ahead of the chains, don't get to third down and longs. Let that offensive line work, run the ball, get 4 or 5 yards a pop on runs. And now you stay on the field. Now you tire that defense out. Now you're able to put some points up on this team. If Carolina can put up 30, why can't the Bears? I think they have, if not as many more offensive weapons than Carolina had.
All right, so getting to the, winning the wild card matchup, that's one thing, right? That's great. But getting to the Super Bowl, that's a whole other beast. Think they got a shot?
Yeah, they do. I mean, they have a shot. If you can take care of your business against the Rams, then you're talking about a Seattle or a 49ers team. You'll have to go to Seattle, but if 49ers are able to win and they have to come to Chicago, now you're talking about 3 home playoff games in horrible temperatures. You stand a chance.
How insane are Bears fans going to go?
Oh, it's going to be crazy. I might not leave my house.
That's probably for the best.
Right.
What is your prediction for Sunday's game?
I think it'll be a close one. I think it has a possibility for the score to be up there. I think 24-27 Bears. I'm going with the Bears again. I have to.
I'll never begrudge you that. James Bickett Williams, thanks again. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
And we're back to wrap things up right after this. And that's our show for this Thursday night. Check out our website for the latest from WTTW News, including this week's live music recommendations in the Chicago area. And join us tomorrow night at 5:30 and 7 for the Week in Review. And do you ever wonder what happens to the 1,000 trees used at Brookfield Zoo's Holiday Magic display? Well, some of them go to the animals for enrichment purposes. We leave you tonight with images of those animals enjoying the new addition to their exhibits, some gentler than others. Now, for all of us here at Chicago Tonight, I'm Brandis Friedman. Thank you for watching. Stay healthy and safe, and have a good night.
Closed captioning is made possible by Robert A. Clifford and Clifford Law Offices, a Chicago personal injury and wrongful death firm and sponsor of programming that offers continuing education to fellow legal practitioners in Illinois.